I've had 11. 10 that were full-term babies and one that was a miscarriage at like 9 weeks.
Early prenatal care is vital, you know, nutrition, but also the folic acid is very important in development early on. So that's why they advise that young women in childbirthing years should be taking folic acid or eating it in their diet on a regular basis. But also, I think the relationship that you have with your doctor is really important because you can have issues within your pregnancy early on, and you would want to make sure that you already have a physician on board that you trust. Um, you know, when I did have my miscarriage, of course, I had a relationship with that doctor already, but you know, getting into his office quickly and him listening to me and really being there for me was not only vital for that pregnancy, but also for the recovery of the miscarriage.
Naturally, your body just forces you to get rest. You are more tired than you ever thought humanly possible. The most tired you've ever been in your life unpregnant, you can't even imagine pregnant. Taking vitamins, of course, trying to eat a healthier diet because it's not just you that you're feeding your child, and it's not just you know, it's not just for that day, but it's brain development, you know, for the rest of their life. I always think about all the little things that are forming and when, because when you think of when life actually begins and all that has to occur just perfectly for the heart to develop correctly, for the brain to develop, for the bones to be in the correct places. When you think about every little design feature of that child is being created during that time. Move around, like, you know, stretching. I'm not like a huge fitness guru, but when I'm pregnant, I do try to like be mindful. I read books, but not a lot of books. I didn't overwhelm myself. You know, what to expect when expecting was big when I was first having the kids. And then another book I really enjoyed was called The Birth Book by Dr. Sears. I didn't want to do the birth class because I knew that my situation was different than anybody else's, and I had the understanding that this was a unique experience for everybody. So I also didn't want to like put certain ideals or restrictions on my experience. Classes can be very good, but it can also make you feel like things are supposed to be a certain way, and if they're not, then you're not doing something right. But having a baby is a very natural process, um, and so I just wanted to kind of feel that. The fourth one, I started laboring on my own, but there was just some weird intuition thing I was having. So I went ahead and went in, which didn't even feel normal. Like, why am I going here? I'm not even, I know I'm not in labor. I was actually supposed to go get a pedicure. So I was on my way to go get my pedicure, and I got out of the car, and I was like, it was pouring down rain. And I got out of the car, and I was like, I am not going in to get this pedicure. I didn't even, I'm like, I got to get home. And actually, and I'm not a panicky person, but on the way home, I was like panicking, like had this panic feeling of, I got to call my sister-in-law. I need to tell my husband, and I just need to get to the hospital. They started picking up decelerations of the baby's heartbeat, and at first it was kind of like, oh well, we'll just watch that. But then they started some pitocin to really kick in my contractions, and I couldn't get past dilated to a 4, or the baby's heart rate would just plummet and then go up, and it was just not responding well. So I had to go in for an emergency C-section, and the cord was wrapped around her head twice. And the doctor had said if I had waited and come in at induction, that she would probably not have made it. So, very important to always listen to your mother's intuition. Yeah. But I think that was kind of also a result of having the physician that I had, who also trusted me and didn't tell me, just go back home, you're fine. And a lot of the times you'll find some that don't have a great bedside manner or don't want to listen to you or be empathetic to you. And just know that, you know, there's plenty of them out there. You can be as selective as you want to be. Getting into my doctor, you know, within like 9 weeks always was important for me to have one that knew my stance on the life of my child and the life of me. I wanted to make sure that he understood that I wanted my child's life to come before mine if something like that were to happen. So with him, like I had a birth plan in place. Well, interestingly enough, my sixth pregnancy that I had decided to go natural, I had switched doctors and I started going to the midwives. I felt like they had a natural approach to birth, but because I did that, the way they approach their patient care is a lot different than a physician. They have a lot of midwives in their practice, so you don't necessarily see the same midwife each time. I was about 6 days past my due date, and it was the day before Thanksgiving, and I started having contractions. So we went to the hospital, and they were not going to keep me. They didn't think I was in labor, because the midwives was like, they want you to stay at home. They want you to labor as much as possible, on your own. So they were going to send me home, and then I had this huge contraction. I was like, I'm not going home. I'm having a baby. And by that time, they started entering my information in the computer, and the baby was coming out. So I had her in like 45 minutes. That's what you call a precipitous delivery, where the baby comes out really quick. For some people, they would think, oh, that's great, like your labor was nothing. But it's really stressful for the baby to do that. There were no complications at the time, but that's our only child that has been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And of course, I don't know if that's what was caused by it or not, but that was my only bad birthing experience. And, she's low on the spectrum, but she's on the spectrum. Yeah, so I think that affected the outcome. So then after that, it wasn't that I had a bad feeling about the midwife, but the lady that came in to deliver my baby, I had never even seen her before. She literally came in and caught the baby, and that was it. So, and I was kind of like distrusting of what was going on. I was like, I'm in labor. I didn't think anybody knew. I was like, her head is coming out, because I didn't know if they knew. And, everything, it was just very strange. One of the kids, when he was born, he only had two in his umbilical cord. I think it's like you're supposed to have 3 arteries or something like that. I can't even remember. But he only had 2, and the cord was real skinny and short. And the doctor had said, and this was number 8, and he said, well, he will probably be, delayed physically, and, things like that. Well, he was our earliest at everything. Earliest walker, everything. He's like light years ahead of other kids his age, like athletically. It's bizarre. So, and there was nothing that I did with him any different for that. Now, what's funny is my number 7. So when I was in nursing school, my last semester, I was pregnant with him. And so he always says he went to nursing school. I was like, okay, I need as much brain power as I can get. Like, I've got baby brain. I'm trying to do nursing school, have 6 other kids. And so I took like extra vitamins. Like, I would take extra folic acid, B6, like these just different, like really trying to make sure I was eating right and drinking a lot of water. Well, I don't mean this against any of my other kids, honestly, I promise you. But he is like super over the top intelligent. I know that sounds so bizarre. So I always laugh and I'm like, oh, man, I should have done that every pregnancy. So again, I have no idea if it was tied to that, but I definitely stepped it up in the vitamins. Number 4, that I was probably very stressed that pregnancy. But he's like my most chill, calm kid, very laid back. The 2 most stressful are the two of the most laid back. The changing of the doctors. And I've delivered in, 4 different hospitals. Something that I never thought I would ever do in my first pregnancies was fly in an airplane at 38 weeks pregnant. But when you have kids that go to college and you're 9 months pregnant, so my daughter went to college the first time, I was bound and determined to go. So my doctor, wrote a letter saying it was okay to fly. I didn't need it, but so I flew and then got her settled at school, and then came home, and 2 weeks later I had the baby. The first few pregnancies I would have never gotten on a plane. I barely would get on a boat or anything. And also I would always think like, okay, women used to like work, in cornfields and like all the things of yesteryear that people would do with their babies and pregnant. Like I can do this. So I just started becoming more confident in my body and what it was made to do. I do not love being pregnant. I know some people that love being pregnant and hate the postpartum. I love postpartum. I never have any problems postpartum. And I can tolerate pregnancy, obviously. Just the kids, kicking, the baby kicking, and the kids feeling it, and seeing it move, and just being like, oh my gosh. Because I just feel like if you have other kids and you're pregnant, it's like, 101 for them to learn about baby development, and just they fully understand that their sibling is inside of you. And even when I had my miscarriage, that did not stop them from calling this baby their sibling. I thought it was very important to incorporate the loss in with the children as well, because that person was real. And it was a part of our family, even for however short of time that it was. But my absolute favorite day is delivery day. It's such a special time. I think a lot of moms, we feel the pressure to do it all. I don't do it all. My kids have to do for themselves too. If I did it all, yeah, I'd be a mess. So I think for the outside, the people looking on the outside into my life, wonder how I do it all, because maybe their idea of motherhood is that the mother does do it all, but I don't. Sometimes I wish even moms of like 2 or 3 kids, if they just stepped back and said, let me just imagine that I have all these kids here and I can't do this for them. Because we have to give ourselves permission, to not do everything that we think we have to do. But for me, it just happens that way, and I unapologetically have to say, no, I can't do that. Of course, I have a very good husband. From the moment we start to the moment we end, it's about each other and our children. Just selfless acts, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of grace to just start over, to say I'm sorry to your children or your spouse or yourself. I don't know how I do it, but it just happens. Yeah. It just happens. Now I work I'm a hospice nurse, which is really the reason I went to nursing school. I wanted to do hospice. I love hospice. I love the beginning of life, the end of life. I love the in-between life, but I love both those very much. This is my quote-unquote career, but it doesn't come first. And luckily for me, nursing, is a career that can always pick back up. But even if it wasn't, my family would always come first. I feel like with having a large family, it is like child development across the board. Like our older kids get to see, they live child development in their life. And for my high school kids who are boys, they get to come home from high school and roll around on the floor with a toddler, hold a baby, someone wants them, right? Like they walk in the door, ah! And for teenagers these days, like they need that so badly. They need to feel that someone is empathetic towards them, or they need to have that compassionate relationship with a child who's younger than them, and you don't see that as much. And I think that helps like their mental health a lot, but it also for our children makes them selfless. They can't always think of themselves. They want to. They're teenagers. They really want to, and they do sometimes. And that's okay, nobody's perfect. But it just by the way of the family, there are many times that they have to forego something that they want or something they want to do because something else has come in front of it that's more important. And so it also allows them to prioritize their own life once they get older. We feel like that every day we have a purpose, our children have a purpose, and it's to live for the other, not for yourself. That's, part of it. But it's not easy. It's, really trusting the process and the gift of human life, because it really is a gift. Mary Haley, Billy, Scott, Matthew, Joseph, Rita, Stephen, John Paul, Michael, and Annie.